Years have passed since one of the most important inventions has come to light. An invention that's changed the landscape of North America. No, the entire world. An invention so amazing that it's rivaled the light bulb, the internet, and the car. It's brought upon a revolution that can't be replicated and has influenced men, women, and children to the highest degree and has forever changed the way the world works. And that invention is Nintendo Labo. What better way to tell people that I'm single than to walk out of GameStop with one of these? I mean, you could always walk out of GameStop empty-handed and you'd get the same results. It's possibly one of Nintendo's most interesting accessories because it's cardboard and was sold at a price point of $70. But why spend $70 on a piece of cardboard when I can get you like 20 copies of Lego Star Wars on the PS2? And I can't believe they got away with it and selling millions because it's cardboard. It basically proves the point that Nintendo could sell anything to anyone and people would buy it. I mean, if Nintendo sold Waluigi branded water, actually I'd buy that. It doesn't mean I'm proud to buy it, but I still would. So it should come to no surprise that people went out in droves to get Nintendo branded cardboard. And I would too! I'm a grown man and a Nintendo fan. I mean, how more embarrassing can I get? However, the short life and death of Nintendo Labo is pretty interesting to say the least. I mean, it had the entire lifespan of a fruit fly because of how quickly it entered the market and how quickly it left. Plus, I think there's a lot more to this product than what meets the eye. Sure, people may just label it as just being cardboard, but there might be more to this than most may think. As early as January 2018, Nintendo started to tease an announcement of a new interactive experience for the Nintendo Switch, and they went as far as to update their UK website with a cryptic update. But what really put people on the edge was the fact that this announcement would be coming right after a Nintendo Direct Mini, and this made it even more strange. We already saw all the games they wanted to announce at this time, so what else could Nintendo have up their sleeves? By this point, the Nintendo Switch wasn't even out for a full year. The library was still tacking on games and the system was still settling in as a next generation Nintendo console. This made guessing what Nintendo's next big project could be kind of frustrating. And at this point, I'm getting a panic attack just thinking about this. What could all this mean? Something that's crafted for kids and those who are kids at heart. Nintendo could be announcing anything. It could be the return of different Mii channels, or maybe the virtual console's coming back. Who knows? It could even be Street Pass. Honestly, I'm even praying to God that we get the return of the Everybody Votes channel. But guys, wouldn't it be really funny if it was cardboard? It's cardboard. And I hate myself. By January 17, Nintendo presented the anticipated reveal, and it turned out to be this interesting new experience called Nintendo Labo. And this was a real wild card of announcements. If you were to ask anybody if playing with paper was on their bingo card for that year, I'm not gonna lie, it was on mine. But this was a real wild card of an announcement that I think made people's heads turn more than anything else. Not a new game for an old IP, not anything new involving Mii's or Amiibos. And while Sony and Microsoft were gearing up for the next gen releases of their consoles, we're getting cardboard? This was a bold move from Nintendo, as although the Switch was doing very well, especially among younger audiences, them gearing their focus to new experiences for the Switch could have potentially had a negative effect on all the great marketing for the Switch so far. It's best to remember that the Wii U suffered from very bad marketing, as commercials mainly geared the consoles to kids. And as a kid in 2011, I hated it. It was like being talked down to and they made it look like a baby console. I can't play those games. I'm too busy playing. Okay, I take it back. Really, changing the tone of the Switch with the introduction of Labo was a pretty risky move on their part, and shifting demographics when your console isn't really grounded in the market, it probably isn't the best idea first thing out of the gate. Then again, it's Nintendo. They're known for taking risks and trying new things. I mean, I'm a grown man, and I still can't stop myself from telling other grown people, congratulations, you have a child on the way and you're engaged. But have you played the Super Mario Galaxy games? The announcement of Labo really showed off the amazing technology of the Switch, but it also showed us the different creative ideas that can come out of this cardboard technology. And apparently, playing with cardboard is pretty popular amongst kids in Japan, so I guess this is where they got the idea from. To be honest, it seems like the possibilities were endless, and the different creations that were made with the Labo were pretty cool. You could be a fisherman, a piano player, and I could finally fulfill my lifelong dreams of being a person with no feelings by being a robot. From the time Labo was announced to even when it was released, it received some pretty good marketing by being showcased off by celebrities like Jimmy Fallon and Ariana Grande, and even being played with by Bill Nye the Science Guy. And this is all great and all, but as a nerd, I don't really care about them. Look, I don't really think the Ariana Grande ads worked because it doesn't seem like there's enough focus on the fact that all the music being showed off was coming from the Labo. It seemed more focused on the singing instead, which defeats the whole purpose. But I do think the ads with Bill Nye were clever, especially taking into account how Nintendo had plans for the Labo to be this all-encompassing learning kit. By April 20th, 2018, Nintendo Labo was finally released, and it shook the entire world. And by world, I mean recycling centers. It seemed as if Nintendo had extremely high hopes that Nintendo Labo would be the next big brand for kids to ask their parents for. Think of it like Lego or Toy to Life products. And I think getting all their focus onto kids would be the smartest move for them. I can't really see adults gravitating towards this concept. I mean, look at me! You think you'd catch me playing around with cardboard? Only on Tuesdays. But Nintendo saw huge gains with their stock price and company value. There was a bunch of headlines on this being the next big thing, but maybe they overestimated themselves and jumped the gun a bit. The initial launch and lineup of Nintendo Labo saw the release of two different sets, the Variety Kit and the Robot Kit, or as Nintendo calls them, Toy-Con 1 and Toy-Con 2. I think these are pretty solid concepts, as the Variety Kit is pretty much the fuller experience, with there being different software available to play. This one's the one that most people gravitated towards because the Robot one, I mean, it's just a robot. The Variety Kit really opened the doors to being more experimental, and there's just a larger playset of different creations that you can make. You can tell that Nintendo was really banking on people picking up the Variety Kit. This was mainly the one that you see in all the commercials, with there being the remote control car, fishing rod, and motorbikes. This kit was the highlight of the creation for Labo, really showing off the different technology of the Joy-Cons and how they can function as almost anything if programmed correctly. I mean, if they wanted to, Nintendo could program Joy-Cons to run for president and I'd be all for it. The Robot Kit, or Toy-Con 2, looked to be a single experience though. Instead of having multiple ideas in one, the Robot Kit is just that. A robot. It's actually kind of similar to a game that Nintendo showed off at E3 2014 called Project Giant Robot, which admittedly looks kinda lame, but with the Robot Kit, this idea is fleshed out a bit more. Not to a full-out single-player experience, but it's a decent romp. Supplied with different pieces of cardboard, you can set up a robot costume that you place on your back and control with Joy-Cons. It plays more similar to a game released on the Wii. And by September 2018, Nintendo then released a much anticipated vehicle kit, which in my opinion, out of all the kits released, it probably has the most meatier and fuller experience. And with there being a track editor mode and thought out gameplay, it's kind of the more video gaming experience out of the other two. And eventually, it received an update to be compatible with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So someone somewhere is beating me in Mario Kart 8 with a piece of paper. With these three Toy-Cons releasing, you can basically just jumble them all together as what Nintendo Labo was meant to be. A new way to play games. It took games and concepts that people are already familiar with and tried to put a new spin on it. And that's really the neat part of Labo, not trying to reinvent the wheel. And I mean that literally. They didn't come up with different original concepts either. They instead chose to build upon already known ideas with a different way to interact with it. It's what Nintendo always does, trying out a new gimmick and seeing what sticks. To be honest, I think these are some pretty clever ways to introduce people to the concept of Labo and building your own creation from scratch. You don't want to confuse people with complex ideas or stuff that's hard to build. You want something that's middle of the road, easy to build, but just requires a bit of thinking to not be mundane. I mean, you gotta appeal to stupid people like me, and the best way to capture the attention of idiots like myself is to keep them interested, but to also keep them thinking. With Labo, you may already be enticed with fishing or playing the piano. They already have you hooked right there, but to truly reel you in, the process of building the Labo sets is a part of the fun. By the end of it, you're amazed that out of all this cardboard and time spent, you wasted your time making a functional fishing rod out of cardboard. But maybe the most interactive part of Labo would be a mode that comes included with all Toy-Con kits, called Toy-Con Garage. This mode gives you the ability to make your very own creations and make different games with the programming software from Labo. You see, for all the people that like to complain about Nintendo games like myself, we can finally put our money where our mouth is and make our own. And let me tell you, I still can't make a game as good as DK King of Swing. Looking more closely at it, the Joy-Cons are very much the stars of the show, especially with utilizing the IR and gyro sensors. Labo just wasn't for experimenting, but it was also acting like a demo for the different features of the Joy-Cons. The amount of things you could create with Labo seemed endless, and Nintendo really started to expand the abilities with the final update of the Toy-Con kits with Toy-Con 4. This one really made a big splash because it didn't suck. Released on April 12, 2019, the latest product from Nintendo Labo was was the VR kit, which produced stereoscopic 3D visuals to the player. This felt like a combination of two specific Nintendo consoles. It harkens back to Nintendo's first foray into VR sets with the Virtual Boy, and it has the 3D imagery of the 3DS. Combining the two, and you just created the world's strongest migraine. The VR kit actually works decently. It wasn't as ambitious as other virtual reality sets, say the PSVR, and I do think it was a bit half-baked when it came to integration into other games. I think the VR Labo kit served as a stepping stone and a side project for when Nintendo may think about going into VR into the future. And there were tons of different updates for Labo so that would be compatible with other games. A rhythm game called Demo used the Piano Labo, and Fishing Star World Tour used, well, the fishing rod. But the VR kit really got the bulk of software it could be played with. By 2019, Nintendo announced a slew of different games that the VR kit would be able to work with. Coming first would be both Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, which I think are great games. But when I think of VR and seeing images right in front of you, these aren't really the first titles I think of. But then again, at this time, these were the most popular titles on the Switch, so it makes perfect sense. However, these games don't really lend themselves to the VR experience since they were already programmed in mind to be played in regular resolution. And it doesn't help that the graphics for the Switch already aren't that impressive, so seeing them blown up and inches away from your face doesn't really help. And that's the thing about the VR kit. It's not really VR. You're just using a Switch in a box to simulate VR. It's not as if new technology was made from scratch for it. I mean, you could just really sit close to your TV, and I think you'd get the same results. But that didn't really stop them from trying later down in the line, because they then updated Captain Toad Treasure Tracker and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with their own separate VR modes. The Smash Bros. VR update was fine. It didn't really do much with it. It just allowed you to see more of the stage in VR and up close. It's adequate, but again, this game wasn't really made with VR in mind. It feels more like an afterthought. But the update for Captain Toad Treasure Tracker might be Nintendo's best use of VR yet. And thank God. I was worried that Nintendo wouldn't let us see Fungus in 3D. It came with 4 new levels and the ability to see the course selection screen in VR. And the 4 new levels really sell you on the VR, mainly because unlike the other games, these levels were made from the ground up and they had VR in mind. They weren't just plastered on as an update like Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. Look, I don't really think the VR kit was meant to be the true way to play these games. It seemed more like a novelty or a gimmick so that there's a purpose to buying the VR kit, so you can say to yourself, that $70 was well spent. Otherwise, you think you just got scammed and you could have been using that money on Lego Star Wars. And with Captain Toad being the last game to get updated with VR, Nintendo pretty much stopped. Since 2019, there hasn't been a single game to get a VR update, and to be frank, that's been pretty much it for the life of Labo. Except I'm a liar. The life of Nintendo Labo has pretty much lived on through inspiring Game Builder Garage, a title developed more in line to teach people how to make their very own games. It's like Nintendo saying, make your own dang Mario Galaxy 3. This took all the creative aspects of Nintendo Labo and expanded on them and made them even better. I can see somebody wanting to get into game development, and purchasing this game would be a nice introductory course. It's like learning how to cook from Cooking Mama, or learning how to take care of a child by playing Imagine Babies. You could tell that Nintendo really wanted Labo and its whole DIY sort of stuff to be a bigger deal. They were really pushing heavy for Labo to be used in schools, and I can see this being really popular in a school setting actually. But the thing is, it's a pretty big project in and of itself, and why would kids want to do that when they could be busy doing other stuff? If you want to get kids interested in game development, you can't give them Labo. Try Over the Hedge on the PS2 instead. It'll make any kid think, how on earth was this even made? Nintendo really tried to push for Labo to become more popular and to be picked up as this family project, kind of like a puzzle. They even ran a bunch of contests for people to participate in, with one of the prizes being a cardboard themed Nintendo Switch, which in all honesty, I want very badly, and I'd sell my kidneys for them. But unfortunately, I don't really think that Labo caught on the way that they wanted it to, and it didn't end up being a big seller. In fact, after 2019, Nintendo seemingly gave up on Labo with little hope that it would return again. I think Labo didn't catch on for a couple of reasons, one being, it's cardboard. Hey, say what you will about Nintendo, they could sell water to a fish, but I think the appeal of Labo isn't really enticing to most people, and in particular, kids. It doesn't really scream fun when you stare at it. I also think that Labo is just a bit too complicated for your average child. Oh, I'm sure it's fun when you finally get to set it up and get the games up and running, but to spend over an hour for games with little to no replay value isn't really the experience that most people would want. People play games because it puts them into a new world and takes them out of reality. This looks like schoolwork on a Thursday morning. When compared to the interactive experiences that surround people every day, I'm sorry, Nintendo Labo just doesn't really look like much fun. Also, there's the fact that you have to own a Switch, and that already cuts out most people. And then you add the fact that Nintendo sold this for $70, and yeah, most people are leaving out of the conversation because they're normal. I mean, think about it. Why would somebody spend $70 on having to build their own gaming experience from the ground up when they can spend less than that on a AAA title, even a game in Nintendo's own catalog? The limited amount of things that you could do with Labo didn't really help, and its appeal is already reduced to people who own a Switch and want to build something for a couple of hours. Which is great and all, but I'm an American. I don't have patience for all this waiting and building. I don't even have patience. The piano Labo that's shown off in all the commercials takes nearly 2 hours to complete. And you can double that by 2 because I haven't developed any motor skills since I was 10. The robot Toy-Con, which looked to be the coolest, that takes the longest time to build, like nearly 3 to 4 hours for that project alone. I'd probably have fun making it, but why do that when I can play Over the Hedge for 4 hours straight and get the same dopamine shot? I think Nintendo should have released a Labo set with everything already pre-built. This is a really big project on its own, and a lot of people like me are just too stupid to want to sit down and do the whole experiment with building. And this was advertised as a family project, but that's the worst part. My family hates me. Even with the Switch being a big success, I think this is a lesson that shows that you can't expect everything to be successful as well. Just because the Switch sold millions doesn't mean that millions of people are going to go out in droves to get cardboard at a $70 price tag. But I have to give it to Nintendo for wanting to try something out of the box and different. Say what you will about the concept of Labo, the fact that they even have the guts to release it, especially early in the Switch's lifetime, is more telling about Nintendo's confidence. It's a pretty neat idea. But this actually isn't Nintendo's first time with the DIY concept either. Probably the more underrated DIY title from Nintendo is WarioWare DIY and WarioWare DIY Showcase, released on the DS and Wii respectively. Nintendo has always had a thing for giving players the tools to make their own game or animation, like Flipnote Studios or Mario Paint. And I have to hand it to them for always pushing creativity onto its users. As much as I love big budget games, these more personal experiences like Labo really can't be emulated. Doing something from scratch and seeing it come alive is all part of the experience for these DIY games, and it's pretty fun. I think even though Nintendo Labo wasn't the biggest success for the Switch, it still played a big influence on other accessories Nintendo wanted to launch, like with Mario Kart Live Home Circuits. It's a mix of toys to life and virtual reality, just like Labo. On top of Game Builder Garage being really derivative of Labo, I think a lot of the DNA from Labo is here to stay. It's just kinda sad to see that a lot of the potential from Labo wasn't reached. I think if it were another simpler project instead of cardboard, Labo could have really taken off and been a bigger success. It wasn't an all-around flop, and it sold decently well, but I don't think it did the numbers that Nintendo was looking for. There was just so much stuff that Nintendo should have done that they skipped out on or didn't even think of. Nintendo Switch Sports would have been such a smart game to make more Labo kits for. Maybe people can make their own tennis rackets or golf clubs. There should have been more support for the Labo VR kits with other titles being more compatible. I'm actually shocked that Pikmin 3 didn't get any VR support, as that game would have worked really well with it. Splatoon would have made perfect sense. How is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe not in VR? That's like the perfect game for it. What are you doing? Pokemon Snap is right there. How could you not use any VR mode for this game? It would have been perfect sense. It's already in VR. And you guys made a camera Labo kit, so do something with them. How could you not make any of this stuff? Half of it is already made. Just make it. But no, I have to see Toad's big head in 3D. Sometimes I wonder if the world hates me. But nope. It's just Nintendo. With Labo presumably dead and with the year 2019 over, Labo hasn't really been heard of from since. And it's a shame because I think with some tweaking and updates here and there, Labo could have been much more. It looks like Nintendo has actually given up on Labo as they haven't released anything for it in over 4 years. And its channel dedicated to marketing Labo hasn't uploaded in years either. Nintendo hasn't updated any game to support Labo since 2019. And there's been a bunch of games that would have worked perfectly with it. It just seems like a missed opportunity from Nintendo to make something that could have took off if released just a tiny bit differently. And I don't think this is a failed project from Nintendo either. It did sell moderately well. Sure, the VR kit didn't take off like the PSVR, and the kits themselves didn't become these hot household items, but I do think Labo did well enough to warrant another go at it. There's probably not going to be children asking their parents for Nintendo Labo, but I think if they change up the idea of building your own toy and use something different instead, I can see Labo doing much better in the future. Nintendo shouldn't really give up on the cardboard either. I think the material here is worth revisiting, but what do I know? I'm a grown man talking about cardboard. The VR kit looked to be a game changer from Nintendo, and I don't understand why they dropped it off so prematurely. To only support 4 games and not gradually continue to update it with new content, it just seems like a missed opportunity. But when you compare it to a product like PSVR, you could kind of see why the VR kit didn't take off as much. The main attraction of PSVR isn't so that you can play your old PlayStation games in virtual reality. The main attraction is to play new games and have new experiences. Nintendo's VR was pretty half-baked. Sure, they're original games, but the Labo VR kit wasn't marketed as a new way to play games. It was marketed as a new way to play with cardboard. The original games in the VR kit are cool on their own, but this isn't really pushing the envelope of VR. It seems like Nintendo was a bit timid with the VR this time around, which is weird since Nintendo has always toyed with the idea of augmented reality like with the 3DS. There was just a lot of original content with the PSVR, and I don't think Nintendo really wanted to enter the VR market like Sony. They just wanted to dip their toes in, and they nearly drowned. I'd like to see Nintendo give another go at it, but next time they should really go all out and not just tack on VR modes to games that are already made, because those, well, they kinda suck. I think Labo in general is worth another shot. It shows Nintendo at its most daring. On the edge of a console reaching success, they decide to switch things up and focus on cardboard. And sure, it's a silly idea, and it's completely stupid. But these are the type of silly and stupid ideas that we've come to love from Nintendo. And even if it wasn't the overnight success that they were hoping for, to even have the guts to do something like this, it's why I always hold Nintendo in such a high regard. They're willing to do whatever they want, even if it makes no sense at all. And it's because they believe in their ideas. And isn't that the type of ideal that everyone should have? Doing whatever you want to do, just because you believe in yourself. Like me! I just wanted an excuse to talk about cardboard for 20 minutes, and I did!